ever wondered why some people seem to have a gift for music? Have you ever wished that you could play by ear, sing in tune, improvise and jam? You're in the right place. Time to turn those wishes into reality. Welcome to the Musicality Podcast with your host, Christopher Sutton.
Did you know that often what holds musicians back isn't a lack of good instruction or a lack of effort? It's that their practice isn't part of a consistent music habit that gives their brain, body, and ears a chance to learn what they need to. In our recent interview with David Andrew Wiebe of MusicEntrepreneurHQ.com and the New Music Industry Podcast, we talked about the importance of a strong habit for supporting the creative process. And this is a topic that cuts broadly across all of music learning and musicality training. There are lots of habits that can help you in music. Things like remembering to warm up before you play, going through a pre-performance ritual to get your mind in the right state, bothering to introduce yourself to the venue manager when you play a gig. But today we're talking about practice habits. What do you do on a consistent basis to help you improve in music? Inside Musical U, we have a training module called the Music Habit, which walks you through creating a suitable practice habit for yourself, and it's packed with tips and strategies to make it really effective. I'm going to be sharing 4 ideas and tips from that module in this episode. How is your music habit at the moment? Do you practice on a regular basis, or just when you happen to find time? Are you 100% clear on how music fits into the rest of your life? Are you confident that your music habit is providing the maximum results from the time and effort that you put in? Wherever you are at with your music habit, I hope this episode will give you some new ideas to improve it. The first tip is, your habit must serve your goals. Goal setting and planning is a huge and important topic, one that we go into great detail on in Musical U, because it underpins the effectiveness of everything else you do. We won't dive into it now, but if you're not yet clear on your musical goals and how the time you spend on music is leading you towards them, then I recommend checking out episode 82 of the Learn Jazz Standards podcast, where I was a guest and we talked all about effective goal setting for musicians. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. If you are clear on your goals, it's going to be much easier to form an effective practice habit. You're going to have a better sense of how much work is required to follow your plan and hit that goal, and what kind of practice habit will best serve you. Some types of music learning are best done in short sessions a few times a day, such as ear training. Others, such as mastering repertoire or perfecting instrument technique, can benefit more from longer daily sessions. And if it's a more creative task, like songwriting for example, then you might find your music habit needs to fit around the times in the week when you're in the right physical and mental state for creating. So tip number 1 is to make sure your music habit is serving your musical goals. The second tip is, be realistic and start small. The research results on habit formation vary in how long they say it takes to form a new habit, whether it's the often mentioned 21 days or longer. Some people, myself included, say it almost doesn't matter because you start getting the benefits of your habit from day 1, and it becomes more and more habitual the longer you do it. What all the experts do agree on is that for forming a new habit, consistency is the most important thing. That means it's better to establish a daily 5-minute habit than have a 10-minute one you do randomly every few days. That goes doubly for the kind of listening skills we often talk about on this podcast. Your brain really needs that regular input to develop the new neural pathways to recognize what you're training it to. So start small. Maybe it's singing through solfa exercises every day in your car on the way to work, or listening to ear training MP3s while you walk the dog. Those are both things I've personally recommended to members inside Musical U to help them fit more training into a busy schedule. Don't trip yourself up by being too ambitious too soon. It's a bit like dieting to lose weight. There are so many diets out there. Some are extreme, some are more toned down. Some work great for some people, others can't handle them at all. And they say that ultimately the most effective diet for you is going to be the one that you can stick to. It goes the same for music habits. It doesn't do you any favors to try and force an unrealistic practice habit into a life that's too busy to allow it. Start with something you're certain you can stick to, get into the habit, and then you can always increase the time or frequency from there. So that's tip number 2, be realistic and start small. The third tip is to embrace the concept of music time. As you move towards your goals, you reach them and you establish new ones, you're going to go through a variety of training plans, and the details of your practice are going to change over time. But your music habit doesn't need to. One thing that's been really useful to our members from the Music Habit module is the concept of music time. Music time is just the time on your calendar that's marked out for music practice. Now you might be thinking, what difference does that make? I know when I practice music. But giving it the label music time and marking it very clearly on your calendar alongside your other commitments reframes things. It helps you to see music time as something that gets priority. You start to treat it like a doctor's appointment or a commitment to pick up your kids from school, something that you don't miss. That's very different from having a vague intention to slot in some music practice if you can, once you've taken care of all the things that are on your calendar. So start marking out your music time each day or each week and giving it priority. That reframe alone can make it far easier to form a consistent habit. So that's tip number 3, commit to music time. The fourth tip I wanted to pull out from our music habit module is get support. Musicians, we're funny creatures. Although we love to play and perform together, a lot of us are actually very solitary when it comes to practicing. I don't know about you, but I certainly always felt a big mental burden around music practice. I was so keenly aware of all my shortcomings that I didn't want to share that practice process with anyone else. I just wanted to fix it all myself before anyone else heard me playing. But if you try and go it alone like this, you're actually doing yourself a big disservice. At Musical U, we put a big emphasis on community, and that's not because we all have plenty of time to sit around chit-chatting on social media. It's because having support in your training can transform the results you get. So we really encourage our members to share their journey along the way with other members and with the team. As a result, they're able to stick to their plan better, overcome obstacles better, and reach their goals faster and more reliably. So when setting up your new music habit, give some thought to where you can get support. Is there a friend or a family member who could act as an accountability buddy for you? That means they don't need to necessarily listen to you practice or get involved. They can just check in with you regularly and ask if you're keeping to your intended music habit. Knowing that someone's going to be asking you like that can actually go a long way to helping you to keep up the habit. This is something we discuss in my upcoming interview with Matthew Scott Phillips and Jeremy Burns of the Music Student 101 podcast. Jeremy said that for him as an adult learner, it's tremendously helpful to have that support and accountability, and it can actually make the difference between him following through on his intended training or not. So think about where you can get support and accountability for your music habit, whether that's in real life or in an online community. Those were just a few tips from our music habit module that helps you figure out exactly how to fit an effective habit into your life, no matter how busy it is. A habit that's going to maximize your results and your satisfaction no matter what you're studying in music. If you're listening to this podcast, then I know that you love music. You want to be the best musician you can be, and you're putting in time and effort to make that happen. So do yourself a favor and set up a strong, consistent music habit that's going to help you reach your musical goals faster and more reliably.
Thank you for listening to the Musicality Podcast. This episode has ended, but your musical journey continues. Head over to musicalitypodcast.com, where you will find the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive for podcast listeners. That's musicalitypodcast.com.